Hey, welcome to Bifocal. We have an interesting show today. We have a gentleman here from Microsoft. We've been having several shows about COVID-19, the impact of COVID-19. I thought it would be interesting to bring on a gentleman from Microsoft and give us another perspective from a large enterprise corporation standpoint. So stay tuned. Hey, welcome back. We have a guest on today from Microsoft, and he's going to come in and kind of talk about what he has seen, what he's experiencing in the market, specifically with COVID-19, what companies are doing at kind of the larger enterprise-wide type corporations. And so let me take an opportunity to introduce you. We have Gavin Ramsey, Business Application Principal from Microsoft. So Gavin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dan. Really appreciate you having me on.
Tell me, what is a Business Application Principal?
Sure. So at Microsoft, we're a large org. We work with both businesses and consumers. So I'm in the business space first and foremost. And within the business space, we have a series of different pillars, if you will, of solution areas. So everyone's familiar, say, with Office 365 or some of our other, technologies. So we have a group that's specific to business applications. So what we do is we work primarily with larger orgs and represent Microsoft solutions around all things business enablement. So within that umbrella, we have things like your traditional CRM technologies. We're talking sales, project service, field service, all the way through to ERP technologies for finance and operations. Our group also represents then a platform called Power Platform, which is a low-code, workflow-based technology that allows some agility and extensibility for app dev within organizations. And then lastly, we also represent mixed reality solutions from Microsoft. So a business enablement in kind of the next gen, which is HoloLens, Remote Assist. It's all the things that a large enterprise might use.
I've been looking at the HoloLens a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure I totally understand its application.
Sure. Yeah. It's kind of tough to understand because it's not designed for consumers. And just about all virtual reality or mixed reality is specific to the consumer market and then blends into business. What we're doing at Microsoft is we've started with the business first. And so it's at its most foundational component, it's a headset that you would wear.
Is it mainly for engineering?
So it has a few different uses. We have one, folks that use it where we'll have a technician, say, out in the field. They might be working on an electrical panel. They might be newer to the organization, and they need guidance from someone back at corporate that's a little more experienced. So in that case, what we'll do is not only overlay a video image of what that technician's seeing, but we'll also give the ability to provide guided instruction remotely. You might be able to point at things or draw areas on what that technician's seeing.
So the field technician, he would have a HoloLens on.
He would.
How about the guy back in the office?
He can just be on a computer.
Okay.
And so we have situations where you just need to phone a friend and you need that expert guidance in the field. That's where it started. Now we've seen that expand quite a bit.
But are you saying the guy in the office, he could point to something and the HoloLens would pick that, the guy wearing the HoloLens could see that and he could walk him through.
That and a lot more. It's pretty amazing because we're on our second generation now. So not only can he see, draw virtually, if you will, if I'm a technician looking at that panel, I might have somebody that's drawing a circle saying, okay, right here, this is the breaker that looks like is currently out. So, and what you're going to do is reach in and grab that, etc. But we're also
turn the switch off
exactly
before you pull it off.
100%. But that's safety was a big driver for the technology, but we're also doing things like overlaying the work order, right, of what needs to be done. So everything's being done correctly. We have, hard-coded processes, hard-coded by the company that's using it so that they're following best practices and safety protocols, most importantly. But it's, timely to this discussion because it's gone from kind of Jetsons era technology, particularly for our manufacturing sector, saying, we'll play with one, or maybe someday we'll get to using those. And it's within the course of a few months become an operational standard for many of them. So it's pretty neat to see.
How long have you been with Microsoft?
Yeah, so I've been with Microsoft about 9 years now, give or take a few months. And just a little background, I've always been in the tech sector. So I have, kind of two common themes. I've always been on the customer engagement side, so customer facing, and I've always been in the technology sector, even, from day one, if you will, post school. And so I've had a bit of evolution over time of doing some work in the hardware space, rental leasing, and once again, two companies and corporations, then into the consulting training space around technology, and then segued at some point into the business application space. And
so it was a natural evolution.
It was a very planned evolution for me.
So how hard is it to get a job with Microsoft?
So, Microsoft, they're very true to the idea that they hire Microsoft DNA. They're not hiring for a position. They're hiring for a cultural fit for the organization. And we're a very collaborative, very open, in some cases too open for some folks that like the more hard charging type of environments. And so we go through many, many interview loops and cycles and circuits before someone actually gets brought in. And everyone, of course, is evaluating, standard fare, evaluating different skills and capabilities. But one of the nice parts about that is when you're done, and I can say, pretty much without reserve, the teams that I work with all have that same kind of open, we're here to learn, we're here to educate each other and support each other, and we're here to do great things for the customer. And it's interesting how pervasive that is when you're not trying to just fill a slot in a seat. It's part of our CEO's mantra, Satya Nadella, is we want to be a learn-it-all company and not a grow-it-all company. And that's really been a true to form, right? As he's, I'm sorry, I said grow it all. I meant know it all company, learn it all, not know it all. But it's been very true to form. But your hiring practices have to support that. Your company culture has to support that.
So do you work? You work out of your home? Do you work at an office?
Good question. So we're all enabled to work out of home. So Microsoft's a pretty big org. We've got about 150,000 folks in the field, primarily split between developer and customer engagement assets. We have our main headquarters in Redmond, which houses about 40 to 50,000 folks. So it's kind of the main city.
Is it like a campus
setting? Yeah, it's a campus setting. Very interesting. It's everything that you would think a tech company would have as far as all the amenities.
So are they working on things that are 5 and 10 years out?
Oh, at least. We have one of the largest technology research, if not the largest technology research divisions of any country on the planet. So the stuff that they're working on, I've had the benefit of taking a few customers out with me to just meet with the R&D teams to try to get ahead of what is the next generation of healthcare or manufacturing
like
look like.
The James Bond movies. Remember they used to take James Bond down into
exactly. Yeah.
And, what was the guy's name? G? No.
I know you're. Was it Q?
Q.
That's it. Yeah.
Q.
Right. Yeah. It's exactly what it is.
He would show James Bond all the latest.
Well, and it's true too, because when you see all the Q tools and stuff that's emerging, you say, I want that tomorrow. So we have the main hub at Microsoft, and then from there it's all regional offices. So we have the benefit to work from home. And then we also have the benefit to go into I have an office probably 10 miles from my home that I can choose to go into if I want to collaborate or work from home. Being on the front lines, I'm often in front of customers. So it's just however you want to balance that.
So you're not to water down your position, but you're a sales position. You're working with customers.
100% direct with customers. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So are there certain Microsoft products that you focus on? You mentioned the business group that encompasses lots of products, but are there certain ones you kind of migrate or you kind of focus in?
So I mentioned before CRM and then some of the other elements. Dynamics 365 is our primary platform for business applications. So everything I mentioned falls under Dynamics 365 umbrella. And then there's different capabilities that the customer can choose to turn on as needed. And so it's great flexibility. It all sits in the same cloud ecosystem. It's a massive multi-billion-dollar integration project to make that happen over the years. But what it allows us to do is to go in, understand the needs or the initiative of a customer, and then back into the technology. We never start with the technology. We start with the need and then back in. But we have such a huge market basket under both that umbrella. It's also natively integrated with everything else that we do at Microsoft. It's the same kind of cloud instance.
Well, before I even go down that path, typical customer for you would be type of size or
Good question.
industry or?
Yeah, so I work with Microsoft in our enterprise space. So the enterprise space is segmented to roughly our 1,500 largest customers around the world, and then we have verticals that we cover. I've in my tenure at Microsoft, I've focused on healthcare, I focused on insurance, and currently now my specialty is more manufacturing and retail, just depending on the geographic mix.
So you're not just covering Akron.
We're not. No, we're not. And it's interesting because we'll have very large customers that are localized. They're running everything out of Cleveland. However, most have operations overseas, and there's a lot of nuances that come with.
So
do you have
a target account base?
I do. I have a named account base, a swim lane, if you will.
And is that named account base? Are these non-customers that you're trying to get to be customers?
It's a good question. So one of the things that you realize when you come on board with Microsoft is literally every company in the world is a customer. It's very unique and it's very strange at first because you can't walk in the door where somebody doesn't have either an active usage of Microsoft products or a history with Microsoft, So on top of that, most of our technologies in the enterprise space are foundational. Companies are using them, like I mentioned, tools like productivity tools like Office 365, which are very visible. But really the majority of what we do is on the back end. They're running all of their applications on our solution. So if I'm a hospital and I'm running electronic medical records solution, it's probably sitting on a Microsoft backend, and it's super critical. If I'm an insurance company, right, all of those tools and what my actuaries are using, everybody else, it's sitting on a Microsoft platform. Now, data, analytics, all that is pervasively intertwined, but it's literally thousands of products being used, collectively. So when you walk in the door with it to a customer, they'll have some use of different products, but not pervasive. We have many customers, for instance, that don't use Dynamics 365.
So you have a lot of investigative things you got to look at just to see where there's opportunity to help the customer?
We do. And we try to straddle the line between some things are competitive, right? Sure, we have technologies that compete with other technologies, but we want to be respectful that it's not just a Microsoft world. Right. And there's a little bit of onus on us because they have such a big Microsoft footprint that we can't come in and say, no, we want you running everything now, or maybe try to force your hand through creative contracting to make you go all in. We actually want that mix and we respect that mix. So what we'll do is we come in and look for fit gap. And then we also come in and once again align with, hey, we're going to open up a new distributor market, or hey, we're going to open up a new division, or we're going to open up a new restaurant service. And then we'll try to once again back into the technology to support that where it makes the most sense. But we also make sure that we're playing with, foundational technologies that may already be in place.
So where's your entry point?
That's a good question. Yeah.
I have to believe it's multiple people. You're just trying to get in the door.
Yeah, it is. With customers, we have relationships from CEOs down to very frontline people, even temporary workers, just because of how pervasive it all is. So when we're coming in the door, I obviously do a lot of work with IT. That's our business applications group though tends to live more on the business IT. So when you think of your VPs of sales, your VPs of operations, when you think of controllers and the folks that are managing, kind of the end-to-end operations of the company, is really where we spend most of our time. But we can't do anything without IT sponsorship because they're the enablers, right? And then these are the folks that have the business need. So, but when you look at, say, we do a lot of executive briefings and taking folks, maybe out to Redmond to educate them on what a end-to-end enablement might look like, or whatever the topic du jour. But it's very common to have CEOs out there, CIOs, once again, the operations folks, all the way down to, hey, we're just frontline doers, but we've got a task in front of us that's super important to the org. Yeah.
So and you don't need to give specific dollars, but the engagements that you're getting involved with,
sure,
these are probably millions of dollars.
They are. It's a typical Microsoft customer. Their contracts are almost always in the tens of millions of dollars, right? We have some that are smaller. I shouldn't say always, but in our space, they're usually a bit larger.
What's the sales cycle look like?
It can range. We'll have some folks that, particularly with COVID, right? But we'll get to that here in a minute, where things have been the hands have been forced to enable alternate work scenarios. But the sales cycle on, let's say we're putting in an ERP system where we're going to be now replacing the entire financial and operational back end of those are long sales cycles. They're very involved. It's not uncommon to have a couple hundred meetings to get to the point of somebody adopting the technology.
You got to get upper management involved, because these are major decisions.
It's so critical. And what you realize in most of the cases in business apps where we are doing something foundational like that, it's a big bet for all areas of the org. If you can't ship, somebody's going to lose their job.
So you find yourself pulling in systems engineers and product specialists.
Yeah, it's. I always say I'm part technical and part Dr. Phil, right? Because what we have to do is align technology with the culture of the organization. Because if you don't, you won't have adoption of that technology if you're not aligning with how people either want to work, need to work, or frankly see advantage in furthering their position.
So you got to be pretty diverse yourself to go in and be able to look at an entity like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the gray hair helps, first of all. So, it's not my first rodeo, as they say. But yeah, I think from it's situational fluency, right? It's around process. And the more you can put the technology on the back burner and focus on the process, the more successful you'll be in my role.
So when you make a call, you call John. Hi, John. This is Gavin. I'm from Microsoft. How much weight does Microsoft carry? The name Microsoft, does it get you in all the time, or some companies say, hey, thanks, Gavin, stay in touch, but I really don't have any. Do you still get that?
It can vary for sure. We'll get some folks, there's folks that are very aligned with, hey, I've been using, I'll just use a competitor. I've been using Oracle for 40 years. And I'm all in. So if you call me, unless you're talking Oracle, I'm hanging that phone up. Or, some folks Salesforce does an amazing job on the CRM space of building really big fan base, right? Of folks that they don't just like the technology, but they just like the company, right? So we'll get folks to say, now's not the right time. It's in the future. But
so that gets back to where you say, hey, you and you have to learn to play with those other platforms.
That's just it. And also we have to look at, is it a nice to have for a department, or are they trying to digitally transform how they go to market? If they're trying to digitally transform, which means, and I'll use the CRM example. So CRM in our minds is not a product. CRM is a strategy. And we can say Dynamics 365 CRM, that's just one little piece of an actual successful CRM strategy. It's data and analytics, it's adoption, it's mobile experience, it's how well does it play with the rest of how you communicate on the front lines today, right? It could be Outlook, it could be other, any other tools that are not Microsoft.
But you understand that. Microsoft understands it. How well does your customers understand it at that level?
They don't. And they do. They're familiar with the tools, but they see each tool as a separate tool. So our job is to stitch that together for them. And so we have really interesting engagement. I was working over the holidays with a company that was going to have a really big bet in the market around 5G. So technology company. And what they were saying was, hey, we're a main player today. They build the cell towers that you'll see, by the side of the highways. They own massive fiber infrastructures, that then power all the communications and so on underneath that, data centers, all that. So pretty big player. But as you're trying to move to 5G, one of the realities in the market is that it's not enough to build those big, huge towers that you see next to the highways nowadays. 5G is all about proximity, because that's really fast data speeds. The only way to do that is you have to be close to the towers. You can't be, driving by and then be 20 miles away. So they're attaching them to the sides of office buildings. They're attaching them to municipal buildings all over the place. But they still have to be approved by municipalities who are used to approving one office tower by the highway every 4 years. Not, hey, we need to turn on 20 within 1 year within your municipality. And of course, as you can imagine, there's all sort of FAA and everything else. So they were missing their forecasts to the street. So we aligned at that level, right? And we came in and said, well, let's talk about that forecast miss. What's driving behind that? Give us the nuances. And what we realized as we were talking to them is they had a whole organization of amazing tools from all the technology tools from all the major vendors that you've ever heard of. But we took a step back and said, aside from the technology, just as an organization, how are you structured? What do your org charts look like? How does the handoff happen between someone who might be going out and contracting for that tower with a Verizon, and then to that person that has to build that tower, to that person that has to support and monitor all those communications? And what we found, it was all highly fragmented. And their ability to meet those forecasts was all about the handoff between the different teams. That's not one technology, right? But it can be one platform that is using multiple technologies to get there. So we worked with them to enable what they call a frictionless enterprise, to help them now work as a unit. And they had their own divisions, because most large companies have a lot of M&A over time. So that delivers fragmentation.
Is it an obstacle to get customers to that level?
So
in a thought process for them,
they have to be ready. They have to have pain. Yeah, they got to have pain. Pain is, we all do, right? I mean, there's none of us want to spend $1 unless there's either pain or desire behind it, right? And so we really try to align it. And it's also that need for engagement is going to be different at every level of that org. Your discussion with the CEO is vastly different than those on the front lines that are kind of like the way we've always been doing it, but they don't own the pain, So we spend a lot of time. So in this particular example, we flew our team down to Houston, where their headquarters were. We took about 20 different vice presidents from that organization through 2 days of just ideation, envisioning, architecture planning, understanding what works, what doesn't.
You and your group, you're putting in a lot of time and investment.
It's an amazing amount of time, but it's wildly interesting projects. And I always say, the older once again, back to the gray hair thing, the older I get, I'm interested in standing up or capabilities for a department, but I'm more interested in saying, let's actually change your financials as far as what you're reporting to the street to the positive through a project that's really meaningful and impactful and is going to now run your operation for the next 5 years. But they're not fast discussions, to your point.
Yeah.
And even with it was interesting too in this one. I think you'll find this interesting after we got done with that couple-day engagement with that group, we then brought in the executive committee for a half-day engagement. Executive committee is going to spend 2 days with you. So, their time is valuable. But we brought them in for a half-day engagement. So it was CEO, CFO, they have multiple COOs and C-suite. But we also had them bring.
So are you the one that's coordinating a lot of this?
We have a team. We have a team of, in this case, we probably had 5 core people that were working in tandem towards this success, and then a lot supporting outside of that. And what was interesting with that is once we brought them in, we also had folks come in. We had a Microsoft CFO come in and talk to them about how we digitally transformed our organization, which we did a few years back. We basically replaced every sales structure, every component, and so on. Because once again, this company they weren't implementing technology. They were going to change the even job roles and end to end. So they were looking for ROI. And the ROI wasn't on return on investment for using a product or a technology piece. It was ROI on us completely changing our organization, how we hire, how we staff. And if we go through all of that, because it's major disruption, what's the return? So we actually share our own stories from within Microsoft. We share our digital transformation stories as kind of a guiding principle, because we were one of the largest to ever do it. And what it turned out was that we were forming a partnership with them in the end that wasn't about selling them a product. We already had a partnership, but it was really elevating that partnership in ways that were very meaningful, and ways that you couldn't do that in 3 meetings, even if they were all on board and wanting to buy that product tomorrow. I don't know if I would let that happen, because we have to know each other very well, and we have to step into that together.
So you're selling much larger picture stuff than a typical company is selling.
Well, in most cases, I think, and also much more diverse. It's within what we sold them in that final deal was probably 400 different types of solutions, right, to get to, but all working in tandem towards a common goal. Yeah. But it's fun. It's big fun.
So what are you seeing in the market with these large enterprise type companies from a COVID standpoint? What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
Yeah, well, I mentioned before that we work with virtually every company, and that we're foundational to what they do. So we've pretty much had to work with every customer that's been impacted. Kind of came to Microsoft first and said, hey, listen, if you're the one that's keeping our lights on from a technology perspective, and we're not the only ones, there's many other vendors in there, but we're looking to you to say, okay, help us respond to this in meaningful ways. And we don't want to do a 2-month engagement around this. We'd like to figure this out in 4 days. It wasn't unusual for us to have companies come to us and say,
were there certain segments that you were running into,
that's a good question.
Common denominators that companies had?
Yeah, it was really, it really depended. So for instance, in say the retail space, right? So let's go 2 different versions of retail. Your actual retail stores, which were kind of shut down overnight, but still had an online presence. That was, one area where they had their own, supply chain issues and everything else that we had to work through. Restaurants, I worked with some major local, national and global restaurant chains that also, if they were dining room oriented, they were shutting down in short order, in a matter of a week or 2, but then seeing carryout business go through the roof. Yeah, but they weren't prepared for that. Same thing, and then same thing in manufacturing, right? Manufacturing, who mostly remained open because most of them were essential at the level that we work with. However, they're essential, but they're not ready to still have people walk into a factory.
Let's take your example of a restaurant.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they got to go from the dining experience to the carryout, and they're not ready.
Sure.
Is Microsoft getting a call from the corporate, the national chain, the corporate? Is that how that is working? That call's coming in?
Yeah, that's how it works. We'll get usually some C-level inquiry, or maybe they've triaged it down a bit.
Here's my problem. Do you got anything you can help me with?
Yeah, and it's very interesting because it'll be it's within the restaurant space, right? It's a lot of conversion discussions. We have loyalty data, and we have a certain level of interaction with our customers that come in and only eat in the restaurant. Right. So we'll keep quick serve aside. That's been a whole different bailiwick. And so they'll say, help us convert those customers that ate in the restaurant to now being carryout customers. And in some cases, for some of the restaurants that have been around for a long time, they just, people would go there, on a Sunday after church or something. They weren't used to having this huge carryout piece. They were starting it up, but it wasn't nearly as mature as, say, here's what we're doing at, a major chain, a Panera or something like that. So what we had to do is help them both from the data side of being able to identify and message to those customers, all the way through to the operations side. So how do we manage the workflow of now, instead of having 100 people a day that are doing carryout orders, we have 1,000. So how do we forecast and staff up for that internally, the people cooking, the people answering the phones,
here's a
all
question
that.
for you.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they need Microsoft?
Well,
why don't they have people internally that can say, well, hey, here's what we're going to do?
Yeah, right.
Where do
you...
And
they do.
Walk me through that. How do you...
They do to a degree. So they have folks that understand their operations and infrastructure. The problem is the game has changed in these situations. So this is the way we've been doing it. And we spent years fleshing out these workflow processes and this enablement process. And now, literally in the course of a week, it's 100% different process.
And they need it finished in a week.
And we have to keep the lights on. We're losing millions of dollars a day. So if we don't get there and help stop some of that bleeding, it's really, really impactful to us. And, we're also in the meantime having, maybe retail is a bit of a different example, but in the other sectors, everybody's working from home. How do we enable that? The customers have changed. We have different types of customers with different buying patterns now. How do we get ahead of that? So it's really, Microsoft saying, hey, we need somebody with a couple 100,000 people that can spend some time with us to say, okay, what have you seen in other sectors that were folks that maybe are already down that path that we could learn from quickly?
What are the struggles you've seen or you're hearing customers tell you from the work from home?
Yeah.
And first of all, how ready were they?
Sure.
From a technology standpoint, I'm sure that, some of them probably had a lot of cloud-based technology, so it was a lot easier.
Yeah.
Some maybe did not have that.
Right.
So what are things you ran into or you're running into?
Now, it's a good question. And what I'll say is in our space, in the enterprise space, most everyone had some level of work from home capability enabled for a small group of people. Now, some were at scale, don't get me wrong. Most, though, were for a small segment. And remember, work from home is not a technology equation only. It's also an HR equation, right? And those two have to mix. So for us, it was very wildly interesting. And it was not uncommon for for us to get a call from the company that would say, we have, 1,000 people that work from home today, or 500. We need to do 20,000 people by the end of next week.
I was just gonna say that for anybody listening. Let's make sure we put this in perspective. We're not talking about 50 people.
Right. It could be tens of thousands. And so, it's really us coming in with SWAT teams, right? With enablement teams. And fortunately, we're in the times we are now, because most of the folks have moved to our cloud technologies, which are extensible, they're scalable, they have the data protection that you need to enable work from home, because people are accessing sensitive company data in their living room now as they're working, right? And so on. So what we found is that
all the HIPAA stuff now.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And that was the healthcare piece was a huge component. If you watch any of the Microsoft Teams commercials that are on national TV now, it talks about major hospitals that were just starting doing virtual consults, but really had no scalability, to doing almost all their consults virtually for all of their patients. Nobody wanted to go into a hospital, first of all, that had COVID patients everywhere, and then secondly, they all the hospitals had policies just to make sure people coming in from the outside weren't infecting, because they haven't all been tested, right? So it was interesting to see at scale, and I think what we found is that companies were more ready than what they knew. And this was a very common theme, where they would say, hey, the reason we didn't have everyone working at scale at home before
was choice.
We thought they needed a little more monitoring, or we needed a little more oversight for certain sectors of those employees. Maybe they're not designed to work from home, for lack of a better term. And what we found in most cases is they've said, it's turned out to be much easier than what we thought. And it turns out folks, we have productivity stats that we'll put up about how much more productive folks were working from home. So once we got past of the, hey, how do we make this happen? The stats that are coming back, we have a group that does nothing but HR analytics using real-time telemetry from the usage of our tools. And then we share that back with customers. And it's amazing the insights that we've been able to gather. So it was rocky. I don't want to make it sound easy. It wasn't, and it continues to be rocky. But what we found is that they were more capable than what we thought. Yeah.
So you said they were more capable, so that a lot of the technology they had.
They did. They had started down a path of enabling it. So when you think of work from home, I won't belabor the technology side, but you think collaboration, right? For those that are used to working in an office, it's not enough just to do email anymore. We're going to be heavy users of video, for instance, for even internal calls, which maybe they never did that before.
Everybody's talking about Microsoft Teams now.
It is. When you look at Teams, it went from it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 million, or 30 plus million users, to 44 plus, but it's the volume on Teams. So we also now have spiked to doing somewhere in the nature, I'm trying to remember what the stat, it's 900 million minutes of meetings per day.
Well, I just know within our organization, Teams has probably replaced 90% of email.
Yes, right.
I mean, we're sending documents now back and forth via Teams.
And thank goodness, right? I mean, I work for Microsoft. I love our Outlook and our Exchange tools, but email's the new voicemail, right? And so it's the real-time collaboration, both within your org and outside, in tools like that are everything, because it's now collaboration in context.
Where's Microsoft, and I've heard, but I'd like to hear from you, where's Microsoft at with Teams?
Sure.
Being more universal, that I can do Teams meetings with people outside my domain.
Yeah. So, and I think there's two components here. And you were asking before about, how are people enabled to work from home? So Teams, you have to understand, is it's a nice technology. It's a collaboration technology for those that haven't used it before, that aggregates all of your communications around a topic. Your topic might be, hey, we're building a new plant. And with that, you're going to have a series of people aligned to that project. They're all going to be emailing and communicating. There's documents that are being shared, notes being taken in meetings. It's one space to do all that, and it leverages a lot of different Microsoft tools in that space. But when you're using that now from work from home, you also need things like, hey, my work at home, or my workplace desktop, that also has to come with me. All of those documents that I used to access off of internal corporate servers, Well, no, those have to be made available in my home as well, or else I don't have that same collaboration experience. So the nuance behind what it means to just simply move collaboration to the home workspace is massive behind the scenes and the security. But you were asking more about, okay, so how are we doing with Teams and the ability to basically stand collaboration up at scale and also in a meaningful way? Is that where you're going?
Outside your company.
Outside your company, right? Yeah. And so, once again, because it's all working in the same cloud tenant, we have what we call identity management and a massive security infrastructure. So the best analogy I can give it is in your daily life. If you go maybe to log into your insurance website to update your policy, they're going to ask you for a text number. We call it multi-factor authentication. So they can send you a text so they know it's you. So there's a lot of verification and security layers that happen when you're using that externally. So that verification might be happening for your own employees because they're outside your office, or it might be happening for your customers. We've also opened up the collaboration workspaces in Teams. So your internal Teams workspace, you can now invite customers in so that they can also stand up channel. You can stand up channels and collaborate with them in the same space, but do it in a secure way where they're not seeing all of your internal components. So it's really foundational. We didn't invent that technology. There was other companies that were far down that path. I think what we did is we took it, combined it with really proven high value assets, productivity assets from Microsoft, OneNote, Outlook, OneDrive, all these different components, and just combined all that into a way that was very meaningful.
Do you see, is Microsoft working on new collaboration tools or
every day? Yeah. And when you look at the evolution of these tools, we've had, a lot of this started when we bought Skype years ago. And that was a communication platform. And people don't realize Skype was the number 3 or number 4
it was big
telecom company in the world. Right. And that's now what Teams has turned into. So, for us, we continue to innovate around what I'll call the artificial intelligence or the system of intelligence around Teams. So one of the ththings you'll notice when you're collaborating across a lot of different topics and so on, you can get what we call alert fatigue. Where, hey, I've got these 8 people are pinging me constantly. So I've got 35 different. If you look at analogous to your phone today, we look at your phone and you see, hey, you've got 2,000 emails out there, and so what happens is you don't check any of them if you got 2,000. So we have to use artificial intelligence to understand your work patterns so that we're delivering alerts and insights in a prioritized way, and then in a way that's also meaningful for you to get maximize your day, what you care about most for your projects.
Now, you're saying this is something they're working on.
It's already there, but it's maturing. Okay. So we're already doing it today in a really interesting way, and then that's pervasive across our products as well. So if we take a step back from Teams and say, well, where do folks work today? That AI infusion is in Outlook. It exists today on a base email level. It exists across all of our CRM platforms and ERP platforms. And it's this concept of get me away from just a lot of information and steer me towards what's meaningful in my life for that day and give it to me on some summarized panel that says, hey, here's things that might be meaningful. And to do that, we're doing things like, because the email's in the cloud, for instance, and we can monitor every incoming message. We're using AI in real time with every single customer to actually help them. We don't have access to any of the data, but we help them. It's constantly mining the narrative, right, of your emails. And so as a modern user today, when you go into Teams or you go into Outlook, it'll actually tell you, hey, by the way, you told Dan that you were going to get back to him 2 days ago. You never set a reminder or a task, but we know this is top of mind, and we didn't see a follow-up email happen on top of that. So it's the way of making this all more intuitive. And it's wonderful because I don't know about you, but I can only track so much. I can only track so much. Yeah. And it's meaningful to our customers. And I think, so for enabling some of these technologies, it becomes not just putting in the ability to communicate, but how well are you communicating? Yeah.
What are you seeing with CRM? Where do you see the market right now?
It's interesting.
Where do you see it going? Or where do you see the pitfalls? Or where are companies struggling?
Sure.
What's your view on all that?
Yeah, and CRM, it's the right question to ask, and I think around customers, because if you look at CRM systems historically, they can all do amazing things, right? And they pretty much all tick the box of what you need for your org. If it's sales, it's going to be forecasting and relationship management. If it's customer service, it's going to be case management and how do I interact with customers, or maybe running a call center or something like that. Field service, arming field service techs out in the field. The problem is there's so much nuance in there around adoption, right? And adoption is, it's at its simplest description, it's a game of clicks. How many clicks does it take me to do a task in the system? And there's very low tolerance today. We want a consumer grade experience on an enterprise grade CRM. So where we live today is around simplification of CRM. Our CRM systems, if I were to give you a CRM presentation, we could spend a week, on that. And sometimes we do. But really comes down to, do I have everything I need to do my job in one pane of glass? And how simple and fast can I do that? Now, that pane of glass might be mobile, it might be on-premise, et cetera. That's where AI comes in, et cetera. So what we're seeing in the marketplace is also then CRM as a strategy. We want CRM to work with everything else we're doing. We want it to work with Teams and be embedded in everything else. We want to see opportunities in that collaboration space where maybe we don't even want people to go into Dynamics to view opportunities or whatever else. We just want everybody to use Teams, and it better be able to all be visible in the platform that I choose as an end user to view it. If I'm in Outlook, I should never have to leave Outlook if I want to see deep insights about a customer. So it's really that integration that's been, as we've gone through, the switch from on-premise CRM, which was dominant, we're at the point now where it's 97 or 98% of our customers choose online or cloud CRM, right? So, but even there, that's been the case, the cloud preference for a while. But even that's been kind of a 1.0 version of, okay, now we're in the cloud, but it doesn't necessarily mean adoption. So adoption is where we live, and meaningful, it goes back to the same discussion we had before. Yeah. Are we aligning with the initiative? Are we helping you meet your 5G goals as part of that? Yeah.
Do you have peers that play in other markets like mid-market, small market? And does Microsoft see Microsoft CRM playing better today in one of those markets better than others?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's, it's interesting because we make different tiers of CRM. So we make a CRM for an enterprise, Dynamics for enterprise. We make a CRM for mid to small market. So it's tiered. Same thing with ERP and
priced accordingly.
And priced accordingly. So what I would say is there's I never assume that we're the right fit. Right. So we may be or we may not be. It just depends on the needs of the organization, but we're flexible enough that we can meet most needs today. So even within large orgs or small orgs, it's the complexity of the task, right, at hand. So I was working with a customer, for instance, a major manufacturer that basically, was very large, 50,000 plus people, but the need was only for about 4 people in a customer service area that all they did was field incoming email requests, warranty returns, product questions for a product line, right? So even though it's a huge company, the need was very small. So the onus is on us to be able to make platforms that can scale from a couple folks up to, major enterprise where all 50,000 are on there. The only nuance there is if it's very simple. Like maybe I don't need all of these functions around email case management. I don't need logic that identifies it as a warranty return and automatically turns it into a workflow, and so on. Maybe all I need is a better way that I have visibility to what's coming in. And maybe I'm responding in a more structured way than what I can do with Outlook, right? So in those cases, I'll say, well, either maybe you're going to use our Power Platform to build out a very simple bespoke view, or maybe you just want to go out and look at an app store from Android or iOS even, and as long as there's security, use a very tailored application for that. Yeah. So most of what we do is aligning at that point.
It almost seems like, and you tell me if I'm accurate.
Yeah.
If somebody's looking for CRM, there's a lot of CRM applications out there, right?
And they're all good.
And if you're only looking for just CRM, they're all going to do 95% of the same stuff.
Correct. Yeah.
What I'm hearing from you is the question really becomes on beyond that. It's the integration of how far do you want to take this in other places of your organization, because that's when they start dropping off.
Yeah, I'd say that's very accurate. And the companies that we're working with at scale, they have major data security. We work with Department of Defense, we work with banks, everything I mentioned before. We, as well as just your average manufacturer, but how they view the security of their data is You could work with a very basic manufacturer. They think their data is just as important as the Department of Defense, and so it's really important that we understand, that align the technology with what they need. So what we'll also see is as you need platforms that you can grow into, because there might be, if you're a company that has 4 different divisions, you might still want one platform so you can kind of manage it centrally and so on. So it might seem very simple, but the management and the back end of all that data and how it's served up can actually be very complex, even for smaller use cases. And then the last piece is we see a lot of folks with operations overseas. And so we'll have, a North America instance, but I was even on calls this morning, right, with a customer that said, okay, so we have instances in Vietnam, Germany, China, the US, and every one of those countries has different requirements of how you're able to access data in the cloud, how you're able to engage with customers, the whole concept, of customers, how we reach out to customers and their willingness for customers to, be able to receive emails or whatever else. It's really for us, then we have to, and so the scalability becomes the ability of the platform. And so to be able to meet the needs of those artists, we have the largest data center footprint on earth. We serve more regions than any other company at scale. And so for us, it's a little easier discussion because we already have data estates in those areas. So it's about turning it on and aligning. But, once again, could be a simple use case. It could be just, hey, we just want to run a sales opportunities. But if you're doing it across the globe, it gets complex really quick. But the good news is 4 years ago, 5 years ago, it would have been really hard to do that. And today it's much easier.
What's changed in the customer service arena?
Yeah, good question. Yeah. And it's also, I think I can say what's changed and also how that's valid in these times of COVID, because that's also driven some of that adoption. So what's interesting is, so over time, the technology of Omnichannel, the idea that you're going to open up self-service channels for customers has been the biggest trend by far.
Define that a little bit.
Yeah. So today, if you go to most websites, if you're buying a lawnmower and you have a question about your lawnmower, you might go to that website and to find the 800 number to call because you need assistance. You broke a part. I need a new blade. I need one shipped to me. I'm going to go out and call that company. That was maybe then followed on by email. So now I'm going to email that company, and there's a new way to engage. But customers we're finding a couple trends. One is customers don't want to call the 800 number to be advised on which part to buy. They actually want to be able to go out to a portal, do their own investigation, and then order that part online. Right? Very simple example. But when you think about all the other industries, it's even food service, right? I want to go, even though there's a drive-through at McDonald's, I want to use the app. I want to order it myself.
Do people want to do that because they don't want to talk to people? Or they're just getting more trained of, I live on the web, I live on my phone, I live on the internet, this is what I do. I don't need to talk to anybody.
It's super nuanced. And the reason we know it's nuanced is back to the concept of omni-channel. The self-service is pervasive, but the channels within self-service is the nuance. So at Microsoft, let's throw a few different categories into that we enable in omni-channel. The ability to pull together, it's a lot about having a consolidated view on the back end regardless of how I'm reaching out to customers. I can have visibility as a company as to all the different ways they may have interacted with me. And that visibility has been very hard to do. But if we take that into examples, did that customer go to the website and do their own investigation? We probably want to know that, right? Did the customer place a phone call? Well, we need that channel too. Did they send the email? But let's fast forward a little bit. The customer, we have an enormous amount of customers that just want to communicate via text, even with major companies, which that's very interesting to manage that at scale and how those are small communication windows. We have companies that are doing an inordinate amount of chat, right?
And they want to be responded to now.
Now, and also know me. When you respond to me, if you've already got my phone number in your system, you better be responding saying, hey, is this about your lawnmower? Model 123, right? Let's do this. That's the differentiator. Customers are fickle today. The old days of brand loyalty, hard to find nowadays. So it's that experience that's differentiating why customers stick with companies. Our chatbot business is amazing. I could throw stats with, we work with all the major insurers and everyone else. We have the back end to do and the intelligence to do chatbots at scale. Companies may be running 2,000 to 3,000 different chatbots within one company for different use cases. It could be customers, it could be internal questions, but it's the same thing. When I interact with you on that chatbot, which is, once again, for people who don't know what a chatbot is, I'm asking questions. The computer is inferring my question and being able to deliver knowledge back to me in a meaningful way. If it's Hilton,
looking like a person.
Yeah, exactly. Or, Hilton or some of these other, I'm booking a hotel room without ever talking to somebody or going to your website. I want to buy insurance and I want to see quotes. I never want to go to your website. So we work with all these types of words at scale. But it takes an amazing amount of compute on the back end. But the compute is more so around personalization, as I mentioned before. The compute is around making sure that this chatbot knows me. And there was this big kind of flood of a while back of this saying, which sounds very arcane, but it was, there's too many crappy chatbots, right? And it was, this is what people were coming to us as, major tech orgs saying, so how do we get past the crappy? How do we get to the point where we're having meaningful interactions? And then the last mile of that is when you have that interaction, the handoffs, it's all about the handoffs, like we were saying before, as the success of these systems. When I have a chat experience that isn't going well, I should have a system on the back end that's in real time monitoring the sentiment of my frustration when I'm chatting, automatically creating visibility to a call center that someone may need to get on and jump in. Hey, is there something I can help you with? I see you're not getting an answer. Don't wait until I've become frustrated. Now I'm requesting.
Well, I think the patience of people are running thin.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah.
They want things now.
Well, and it's interesting with COVID, right? When we talk about the transition back to this topic, it's all about, hey, I want things now. And also, if I'm having issues with something that is part of your brand or technologies, now I really want it now, right? And you only get one chance sometimes with customers before they flip over. So what we've seen is...
Well, and it's easy to flip over because everything's at our fingertips.
Sure, yeah. I'll just go to Amazon and order a different one.
I'll order a different, and it's here tomorrow.
Right. And so it's really crazy in that sense. And with COVID now, with everything now shipping online, with nobody, ordering directly, it's been 2 steps for these major customer service areas. One, let's move massive call centers into work from home. Even if you've outsourced your call center to India, which a lot of folks do, as we all know, outsource everything, they're working from home. I mean, they can't go into an office. They have COVID restrictions. So it's at scale, moving those people into an environment that is not highly, somebody's not peeking over you each day if you need help. But for customers, it's been forcing I need new channels to reach out to you because I've got questions. I don't want to wait on hold for 3 hours to change my airline ticket. I need to be able to get on and chat and change it, within the next 30 minutes. Yeah. So it's been interesting. Yeah.
Are you hearing companies say anything about sending people back to work versus keeping people home, or a hybrid of each? Mm-hmm. What do you hear from your standpoint at the larger company level? Sure. Yeah. And it dominates. It's a discussion within every one of our customers. Nobody's immune, to use a COVID term, from this, approach. And so it really becomes what we're hearing is, yes, in different segments, and it's nuanced because it's are you a manufacturing organization? What type of business are you in? Are you a restaurant? Are you, retail, on and on and on. And so what we're finding is 2 things. One is companies are hungry for the data around how do we manage at scale who's opening up by state, what governor made an announcement yesterday, or what municipality said, okay, now we're going to allow, a 6-foot distance if you're in an office. So we're going to let this sector open. But how do you get ahead of that, right? And how do you plan? And then once you have that, how do you automate some mode of communication to the employees and customers in some cases of, hey, we're reopening and here's that ramped schedule. It's a massive project, And then on the flip side of that, you have HR sensitivity. We have customers all the time that say, hey, we got 4,000 sales reps that used to all work in our office. They've now moved in, and they were out in the field, day to day working with customers. They've now moved to work from home, but now we want to bring them back in the office kind of quicker than others because sometimes sales guys are they need a little corralling in certain situations and so on. But you'll have folks, that will come in and the sales folks will say, I'm pregnant. I'm not coming back in the office.
I'm not taking that risk. I don't care what your timeline is. My timeline is, January, or I'm going to quit, and that happens day to day. So it's that what we have is an inordinate amount of cycles being spent on not only understanding the data of markets opening, but internal feedback loops from employees as to when they're comfortable coming back against the needs of customers.
What are they telling you from the sales standpoint? And as far as travel, am I gonna move to my sales reps are just gonna be doing more video conferencing now?
Good question.
And if so, what's that look like? Because whatever the larger companies do, the smaller ones, the technology falls down. So what do you hear there?
Yeah, and I'll say, and to that point, as we were talking about earlier, technology is more available now, right? The ability of enabling work from home, 5 years ago even was a lot more difficult than it is today. I can buy an online license and stand up, for even my 5 users at my company to work from home. That didn't used to exist. So across the board, we're seeing, that just once again being done a little more at scale. Used to have one person, now we got 10. So what we're finding is that it's wildly interesting. The work from home component, where we said before, companies were saying, hey, it's working out better than what we thought as far as people working from home. And we're finding out people are very productive, right? So it's now translating into conversations already. And it's strange, right? Because COVID's only been going on for, I can't even tell you, it seems like it's been 4 years, but let's call it 90 days, 120 days, really at the inflection point. So within that span, we're seeing companies say, hey, it's working so well for work from home scenarios. We're going to go ahead and we're going to keep this in place. I hear this every day, literally every day from folks.
Keep what in place?
The ability to work from home, number one. The option to work, the mandatory work from home, number one. The option from work to home, number two, by different roles in the organization. And then three, the ongoing investment into how we monitor and support that work from home strategy. But we're even having, I've been in many discussions now that's even around how do we then align that with cutting back on office space and things of that nature. In real time, that's happening.
Yeah. It's interesting you said that, because I had a gentleman on, an IT professional, just the other day. And that was exactly what he said. He said what he's hearing, and you kind of echoed it, is a lot of these companies, they had to move now and get people home now.
Right.
And so they put a lot of Band-Aid things in place because that's what they needed.
Sure, yeah.
But now they're deciding this is working well.
Right, yeah, let's get the strategy going.
I get it. I got to go shore up some technology now
to
make it a little more permanent.
Yeah. And I think, the Gavin Ramsey view of that, not the Microsoft view, but the Gavin Ramsey view of that. Of course, we'd love everybody to work from home. But, Microsoft's always been enabled to work from home, as I mentioned previously. We have that flex for most people. And so one of the things that we notice when we get new hires, they'll come from companies where they've always worked in an office. And we'll say, okay, now either you can or have to. When we don't have an office, exactly where you're at. There's a major, I think, psychological adjustment that has to follow a work from home strategy. Some people are just used to collaborating face to face.
It's not for everybody.
It's not. And I think, we haven't seen the outcome yet. We've seen the work from home enablement. We haven't seen the outcome of work from home.
Still the honeymoon phase.
It is. And that's what makes me maybe a little bit nervous when folks say, hey, we're already talking to our landlord about, diminishing office space and stuff. And let's give it a beat maybe. And let's make sure that we thoughtfully have the employee feedback loops, that we're capturing all that telemetry on not only productivity, but now satisfaction, right? And that's what we've been doing internally for us and with customers, probably the most these days. Yeah.
So what do you think from a sales structure standpoint?
Yeah, I'm sorry, you asked before about the sales changes in the structure piece.
Well, I was talking about travel.
Sure.
What are you saying there? But also along the same lines, are customers sharing with you anything from they're redesigning their sales structure, their sales strategy? What do you hear there?
It's pretty fascinating, actually, because if any, it's doing two things. It's forcing customers to sharpen their swords in a way that they probably should have done pre-COVID, right? They're having to get more specific as to understanding the needs of the customer because the needs are changing, right? The customers are buying differently now because they're adapting to their customers and so on and so forth. But so it's sharpening the sword on, what should I be talking to my customers about, which might have been different now than it was 60 days ago. So we have customers, let's say, that are out selling, uniforms and fire safety and all these other pieces where it's like, hey, the uniform business has really dropped because nobody's going in. But man, the fire and safety
shorts and t-shirts. Now,
yeah, right. But now the fire and safety stuff's through the roof, and so it's knowing, retraining your sales reps with data of where they need to be focusing within their territories. Now, I will say the economic impact has been huge from COVID, right? Across all companies, we've seen pretty sizable reductions in sales force. Once people are adapting to an unknown market, they assume that market's going to be down for a while. So we found them to be a little bit quick for sales and marketing to slim that down. So
you're seeing some retraining.
Yeah, we are. We're seeing retraining. And then lastly, what we're seeing from is the actual even restructuring of territories and how folks engage within those territories, who they need to engage with. The buying committees within their customers have changed. It used to be, hey, I've worked with this guy, we're selling some sort of tool and die or machinery, and we've always worked with this one buyer. He and I have been together for 30 years, and I know he can authorize up to a $50,000 sale with me, right? Well, not anymore. And just within the last 120 days, it's now that $50,000 sale requires 2 levels of approval above him. And we better know that, because otherwise our forecast and our demand management for our side are going to be all off. So, it's interesting the amount of surveying work that we've done on our platforms of enabling surveys, executive surveys between companies to understand that, what are you thinking? Where are you going? This is kind of the Dr. Phil side, as I mentioned, what do you care about? So that it can trickle down into how we restructure these sales orgs. And it's in the end, it's going to be a plus. It's going to be more data-driven salespeople versus, hey, here's an A to Z company list in my territory, and I'm just going to start calling, which is a lot. You'd be surprised at how much of that has gone on in the past.
Sure.
Yeah.
I want to start to wrap some things up,
Sure.
but anything you see that, from a technology standpoint, look out for, because this is going to be coming. Do you see anything like that that's maybe a little new, or it's going to be a expanding of something that we currently have, but you're going to see it really grow? Anything like that?
Well, I think there's a couple things. One is we started off the conversation talking about mixed reality and the Jetsons of it all. I've got companies that within the course of 30 to 60 days are using it across the globe. Right. And I mean, at
so they're
scale.
jumping in big time.
Oh, big time. Yeah. And Microsoft has, we've identified that we can't just be out selling software in these times. So we've opened it up and said, hey, anybody that's in our enterprise space being impacted by COVID, use it for free for, up to 6 months as we get through this. We won't make you sign contracts.
You want the data. You want the real data on it, as far as how people are using it.
Well, and also we just need the to enable the customers, because they're also saying, that, hey, I'm opening up a factory in China. This is a customer I had. And right in the middle of COVID, we were installing all the machinery, and we couldn't do it anymore. And this was a big bet. Major dollars went into this. And also, we also shifted supply that we have to still see through on. Well, it turns out in order to stand up the machinery, the manufacturer of that production machinery said, we have to have a rep on site with you, or else you're not allowed to assemble that. So they could still have their people in the factory. They couldn't touch it. So they're using mixed reality with the vendor that sold them the machinery and their folks, so they can all collaborate in a view, but a guided space to assemble all that machinery in real time, so they're not being disrupted. So it's pervasive. We already had thousands of users, thousands of companies on that technology. But once again, it was 5-10 users. It wasn't at scale. We had a few that were doing massive, vending machines of HoloLens devices while they're on the floor, major airline manufacturers and so on, airplane manufacturers and so on. But now it's become commonplace. So it's just becoming the new normal. And the new normal is probably the overused term today with COVID, but it's so accurate. So you're going to see that, the mixed reality component, continue on. You're going to see bringing consumer experiences into enterprise applications. It's accelerated so much that you're going to see that going forward. And I think one of the last pieces I would mention that's been pervasive for what we do at Microsoft is, it's not technology, is you're seeing an empathy around it all. you're seeing that salespeople are no longer going in saying, hey, so when are you going to sign that contract? So when are you going to, not just us, I mean, with our customers. Now it's, what do you care about? Now it's, what are we aligning with? If it's sure, I understand you want to do that, but you can't do that. So we have to go educate our folks internally, back to the customer. But in general, it's building a more empathetic relationship between us and our customers, as well as them and their customers, right? And I think at the end of this, there's major lessons that we're going to learn from that of just how to interact person to person a little better, even if we're not in the same room because we're working remote over video. Yeah. It's going to build the empathy into that discussion. So you're going to see more technologies around understanding the needs of customers directly intersected in with the actual discussion taking place via video, et cetera.
And it sounds like the sales rep's role is going to become more and more important.
It is. They set the tone, right, for a lot of this on the front lines. The sales rep's role, but like we said, it's the customer service agent who's, there's a big trend towards those folks upselling and so on while they're on the phone, so they have to set that tone. Yeah. And then and then I think, there's we could do another podcast on about another 100 major technologies that are just, getting ready to emerge that I think you'd find very interesting. But at the end of the day, it's not sexy. It's how are we harnessing data in a way that's more personalized and meaningful so that we can adapt to the needs of the business.
Sure.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, you covered a lot of interesting stuff, and I think if I had to walk away with that, there's a couple things I think you hit on that are pretty heavy. One is at your level, you're not selling a product.
It's accurate. And frankly, none of us should be at any level, right?
Well, and I think that's the second piece I would move into is you're selling a very integrated solution. Mm-hmm. And if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that really has to happen down at the smaller level too. We got to get to know our customers' need more.
Sell the experience, don't sell the technology.
Yeah, we can't just sell a commodity.
Yeah.
Commodities are cheap. There's no value in the commodity.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah.
And we got to sell bigger. So I think you hit home on that. And if there's salespeople out there, if there's sales managers out there, that's a pretty big takeaway, I would say, that from this, because that's what I'm hearing from you is it's a solution sell. It's get to know your customer, his or her need,
right,
and not just what they're telling you the need is, but we got to get behind the curtain and find out.
It's very accurate. Your forecast, might flux a little bit, right? We're not selling widgets now; we're selling solutions. So those are more.
But the sales can be bigger too,
and the partnership's bigger. When you're done now, you're no longer somebody that's sold a whatever to that customer. You're now part of their business.
You know their environment.
It is. And inevitably, it come back to you to say, you spent all those calories with us up front to understand us. Well, the process is now extended out here. Let's keep that going, and it's so valuable. And it's a better way to spend your day, right? It just is on both sides of the house.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you run into some interesting applications.
We do. We have the benefit of having a massive portfolio. And the other thing I'll mention is, we had in certain countries, we had a 700% increase in cloud usage. We weren't prepared for that in the matter of a week or a month.
So you had to scurry. Microsoft had to scurry too.
You wouldn't believe it. And it's Teams and everything else. But you have to understand at the same time, we make Xbox, right? And all these other technologies. All the kids are home from school. Guess what else? I mean, that's using the same cloud resources as what corporate folks are. It's a massive data thing. So we saw that spike too. So it's for us, it was, you think that's a great thing. And surely our stock price is up and that's excellent. But being able to respond to that is amazingly expensive. So for us, it's been, it's how do we, create these experiences of, not only.
What's amazing is all of the trickle effects.
Oh yeah.
Okay. You mentioned this COVID. Who's thinking about Xbox and the demand that's putting on the company who produces it?
Right.
But that's a real demand.
It's huge demand and it's global, and it's those games. I don't know if you've seen any Xbox games recently, but those aren't your Atari, right? Yeah. Those are pretty advanced, massive polygons and everything else going on there. And it's all run out of the same, those maybe not exactly the same, but the exact same footprint of data center, and it's got to be delivered over, millions or billions of miles of fiber and everything else. So it's its own engineering experiment. So we've learned a ton at Microsoft of, as much as everyone else that's out there now, of plan for the unexpected. I don't care if it's a supply chain discussion or if it's a work from home discussion. plan on the unexpected because the old rules don't apply in these situations.
No.
And there are things that can happen that literally affect everybody around the globe. Whereas before, I'd challenge you to point to something that's been at that scale before that disrupts every single business. And there's going to be so many learnings for us and others. I think we've just like traveling to the moon, how that advanced technology.
I don't think we even know yet everything that's.
It hasn't. Nor some of the fallout from it, but also the positives.
Yep.
But I think it's forced innovation in a very short period of time. People are going to write books around how that has propelled us forward.
Yeah.
What would normally be 2 years of innovation, we've seen in a couple of weeks.
We've seen it in our own company.
Yeah.
It's forced us to make decisions in 60 days that we know we would have drug our feet over 2 or 3 years.
And we'll be the better for it in the end. It's a shame it took something like the pandemic to get us there, but we'll be better for it in the end.
If somebody's listening right now and they would want to reach out to you,
sure.
How would they contact you?
So it's simple enough. I'm more than happy to have folks contact me directly, and you can do that at gramsey@microsoft.com. GRAMSEY, Microsoft.com. And that's for any insights, how we as an organization are scaling what we do in our change in operations and sales structure and, customer service, as well as just simply, hey, we have needs, right? And we can do that as well. And I've very segmented group of folks I work with, but we have somebody that works with everybody out there.
Sure.
And so we always encourage, reach out. We always promise to come at you at the partnership level and not the product level.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, hey, thanks for taking the time. I know you're busy.
Hey,
thanks for taking the time to come in.
This was a fantastic experience. I really appreight it.
And it's great to be able to. Insight.
It's interesting. It's almost cathartic to, having been on, 8 or 9 hours of calls a day throughout COVID, responding to these things. It's almost interesting to unpack that a little in this type of discussion with you and start to get into those lessons learned. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, we'll have you back.
Great.
We'll have you back. And if you're running into interesting topics and you think it's interesting, give us a call.
I'd be happy to.
Give us a call.
I've got a
We'd
laundry
love
list.
To have you back.
Yeah,
good.
Great.
Well, hey, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thanks to Bifocal.
Thanks for listening in, and we appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. We covered a lot. I think this was a little bit of a different perspective from some of our previous shows. I mean, we talked about some very large enterprise types things, and there's things there that are similar to the smaller scale, but definitely some different topics, different perspectives. So we appreciate you listening in. If you like shows like this, hit subscribe. We'd love to have you follow so you're aware of more shows coming on. If you have ideas for shows that you would like to hear, send me an email, dharsh@danharsh.com. I would love to hear from you. Love to hear what type of show you would like to see, and we'll make sure we get it on the docket. Hey, thanks for tuning in.